welcome everyone in attendance and at home. I would remind everyone if you would turn off your electronics, please, so they don't interfere with the meeting. And I'll ask at this time if there's any conflicts of interest amongst the council members. No, thank you very much. Before we get to the adoption, are there any additions to this evening's? Mr. Clerk.
Your Worship, under item 4, I have one requested addition or change to the agenda for Council's consideration. Under 11.2.3 of tonight's agenda, we have correspondence from Swade Productions, which involves a request to film on Victoria Street. Mr. Nicholas Shields, on behalf of Swade Productions, is here this evening, and he's offered to make himself available to give some background and answer any questions that Council may have. So I'm requesting through your worship that we move that agenda item up to our very first public presentation and make that 6.1 this evening.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bonnie, supported by Deputy Mayor Meloche. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Any other addition?
Item 5 under the agenda, adoption of minutes, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held August 21st, 2017.
No, we're going back to September the 5th. Any further addition? I believe we just moved that from 11.2.3 up to earlier. So now we need to move the adoption of this agenda. Councillor Snively and Councillor Bonnie. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Now
Moving on to item 5, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held August 21st be adopted as circulated.
moved by Councillor Vogt, supported by Councillor Bjorkman with a question. Councillor Vogt.
In terms of tonight's meeting, under the caboose consideration, I'll be talking about that at a later time as of tonight. If we could, please.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Your Worship, as item 6.1 is revised and adopted under the published agenda this evening, we have Mr. Nicholas Shields here from Swade Productions. And Mr. Shields is speaking to a request to film on Victoria Street here in the town of Essex.
Yes, sir. You just push that purple button in front. There you go. You've been here before.
If I can't figure out sound, I shouldn't be making a movie in your region. Hi, thanks for having us. I'll make it as brief as possible. We're shooting a 1970s crime film in the region, and one of the public areas that we're trying to secure and have access to is a small stretch of, I believe it's Victoria Avenue. Let me get the exact address in Harrow. A section of Victoria Street between King Street and Maple Street. And we're filming into the early evening and after dark. We understand the concerns to approach the residents in the area and let them know what we're doing, as well as provide, and I think we already have today, provide $5 million insurance on behalf of the town of Essex, and as well as make sure that we man the barricades that are being provided by the region. And the film itself, it doesn't take place in this actual region. It takes place in the southern U.S. If we were just to disparage anybody, it would be in the southern U.S., and it won't even be disparaging them. So it's...
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? Councillor Snively?
Through your worship, I think this part here is just looking for approval
Yes.
to do it, so when time's right, I'll make a motion to approve.
Sir?
Thank you.
No
Councillor
problem.
Vokes?
Well, I wanted to talk briefly just about assistance if they need be, but we can't really do that until council approves it. So my preference would be seeing approval and then ask discussions on a need be.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Go ahead. Councillor Snively, you make the motion.
Yeah, I'm making a
Okay.
motion.
And supported by Councillor Bondi. Any questions to that motion? Nope. Councillor Vokes, and then Councillor Bjorkman.
Under the anticipation that there will be support for this tonight, who from administration could this production company work with? Would it be Doug? Would it be Chris? Who would we direct to help them on a need be and assist them wherever needed?
That would be Mr. Sweet, Director of Community Services. Right, Doug? Would you like to say something? Sir?
Your worship, just for council, I did send out a previous email, but the CERT committee with fire, police, and all the departments did meet on this. All in support. We are providing barricades. I think Nick can verify it's major in your terms, but basically it's shooting in a car, so there's not a lot of action going on. So we are doing the barricades and helping them with all that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bjorkman. Oh, okay. Thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor? Motion carries. Now,
Thank you.
Councillor Vokes, I think you had a question. You got it? Okay, good. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Six 6.2 now on tonight's agenda, Your Worship, is the Council and Ward Boundary Review Final Report. This is being presented this evening by Dr. Robert Williams in conjunction with Watson and Associates, and this is presented through Corporate Services Report, Clerk 2017-010.
Mr. Williams, welcome to Essex again, sir.
Good evening. Have I got this on? Close enough? Thank you. I have a presentation here which I will work through. I know that members of council have heard parts of this before, and perhaps many of the people who are behind me have heard it, but so I don't want to dwell on it in great detail, but it is important to provide an overview of the project that we're working on. This is a project that has been undertaken as indicated by Watson and Associates, and I have worked with them in this particular project, and it has been running over several months. We began our work late in 2016, working with staff and doing some preliminary discussions about what this particular project would entail. There were two formal phases of the review, and I was here last in this spot in mid-May to work you through what we looked at in that first phase, and that involved basically four questions that are there on the screen. This review was initiated because of the wish of council to review the question of how the position of deputy mayor should be filled. Then that question led on to the issue of whether that would mean retaining the same number of elected officials or changing it in some fashion, and beyond that, how members of council will be elected either in wards or at large, which would be a change. So we brought that back, we had consultation on that, brought that to council in May and got some decisions around that. I'll come back to it in a moment. The second phase of that, because of the decisions that council made, led to a ward boundary review. There's a visual explanation of how all of these activities have worked out. We're now, of course, down at that third box there under phase 2, presenting some options through a recommendation to council tonight. Just part of the context, which is important in all cases, is to look at how this council is currently elected and what the municipality, if you will, looks like. The town of Essex, of course, is an amalgamation of 4 municipalities that took effect January 1st, 1999. At that time, the administration and activities of the municipalities were blended together, and a new council structure was created as part of a set of councils that were established across Essex County. In the original ministerial order, council was to be composed of a mayor who was elected at large, as are all mayors in Ontario, and 6 town councillors who were elected in 4 wards based on the pre-amalgamation municipality. So in effect, the boundaries of the wards perpetuate the boundaries of those 4 municipalities that were amalgamated, and those histories go back, of course, quite a long way. The part that triggers this activity in the first instance was the arrangement that one of the ward councilors would be elected deputy mayor. And that individual would sit on county council along with the mayor to represent the town. The procedure was that, first of all, only the 6 ward councilors were eligible to serve in that office, and they would be elected by the rest of council. I would say that's quite an unusual model across Ontario. It is used in other municipalities in Essex County, but it's not a fairly typical approach to electing a position like deputy mayor. Now, there are 2 relevant parts of the Municipal Act that frame these activities. Section 217 is the component that authorizes council to establish the number of councilors. And again, we will refer to that. Council determined to keep the number at 7. And to determine whether those offices shall be elected by general vote or wards, or by any combination of general vote and wards. So again, that's an option that was responded to in May by the council's decision to retain wards for the election of the councilors. Section 222, Part 1, is what we're dealing with tonight, at least in this particular report, because it authorizes the municipality to, quote, divide or redivide the municipality into wards or to dissolve the existing wards. So that's the particular language that we're using. The direction we have, to jump ahead a little bit, was basically to come back with a proposal to redivide the municipality. Now, that may sound like a fairly straightforward process, but the reality is, beyond those 2 statements and the language in those 2 sections of the Act, there's no other information whatsoever. The province provides no process, no principles, no guidance, no timetable, no nothing. It just says you can do it, go away and do it, in so many words. That's one of the reasons why it was necessary to, I think, bring in outside resources through Watson & Associates and myself, because this is a process that carries with it a number of pretty important implications. Staff, I think it's fair to say no member of staff had ever done one of these. I probably would also say no member of staff wanted to do one of these, but this was an exercise that we felt we could provide to the town, and that's where we are now. In that May report that led to these decisions, or in the preliminary to that, we set out what we call 4 layers of decisions. And by that I meant there was a certain logic to which of these questions needed to be answered in what order, because you don't really start with ward boundaries until you know other questions about how council is going to be composed, in some of the questions that flow from the particular decisions. And clearly, the position of deputy mayor was the first question. How did council want to deal with that? Did it want to make a change or not? And if it didn't, there were still things that we need to consider. If it wanted to make a change, then that was within the powers under 217. And council did make that decision that in the next election, the position of deputy mayor will be determined by a general vote of all electors in the town, which means any eligible elector could run for the office, and it would be all electors who have a vote on determining who that individual is. Council also decided that it will continue to be composed of 7 members, a mayor and deputy mayor and 5 town councilors. So in a sense, under section 217, it opted to make no change. So we stick with 7. And as I indicated a moment ago, it determined that the town councilors, namely 5 of them, would continue to be elected in wards. And we did have discussions in the paper about whether that was the right decision to make or what some of the pros and cons were. council decided that wards would be retained. Now, one of the immediate questions becomes how to make that work, because if we're going to have wards, and we're going to elect 5 councilors and not 6, and given that there have been 4 wards since amalgamation which have never been amended, it's necessary to undertake a review of the boundaries through a ward boundary review to ensure that the wards constitute an effective and equitable electoral arrangement. And those terms, effective and equitable, are ones we will touch on in a moment. So even if council had decided to retain 6 councilors in 4 wards, I think it was appropriate to step back and determine whether those wards are still relevant, appropriate, and equitable. As I said, the direction we have is that we're taking 6 councilors and now having 5, figuring out how to elect 5 councilors. So, what is a ward boundary review? This is a bit perhaps academic, that's my background, so I'll have to live with that. It's a task to design units of representation. That's all it's doing. How are you going to elect people that reflect the distribution of the inhabitants of a municipality for electoral purposes? Units of representation. How are we going to elect the people who sit around this table? And ward boundary reviews are things that should happen periodically. That is, they need to be reviewed to ensure that the representation that they deliver is consistent with certain democratic values, primarily equity, primarily being fair to all of the residents. A ward boundary review is not something that you do once and you leave unattended for 30 or 40 years. Communities change. You need to look at how the units measure up in the light of changes that occur within your municipality. So as I said a moment ago, it was probably timely even without the change from 6 to 5. As I said also a moment ago, the province gives us no direction. So in the course of putting this review together, staff developed terms of reference and what were called guiding criteria for the ward boundary review, which were adopted by council back in October 2016 through Clerk's Report 2016-009. So we didn't make up the principles, the criteria. You endorsed criteria, and we were tasked with trying to design a system that would meet as many of those as possible. It's important to note, too, that the terms of reference also begin with a statement that I've quoted here. The review will have regard to the following guiding criteria, subject to the overriding principle of effective representation, set out by the Supreme Court of Canada in the reference rate provincial electoral boundaries. And I will speak to that in a few moments. So the guiding criteria. The first one is representation by population, one of those fairly important democratic values we talked about. Wards should have relatively equal population totals. However, a degree of variation is acceptable given the differences in geography and population densities, as well as the town's characteristics. Taking that apart very briefly, the town is not a neat square with population distributed equally across all parts of the landmass. There are not neat and tidy lines in roadways that run up and down in east and west. We have other factors that we need to take into account. Concentration of population and the characteristics, referring to the fact that the town does include urban areas, if I can call it that, rural areas, shoreline areas, other mixes, and we need to take those into account as we try to address representation by population. In passing, we note that the estimated population in 2016 of the town is 22,100. That's the number we work with in this process, but about 1/3 of those are located in the Essex Urban Center. So again, that's part of the characteristic. not distributed evenly. Second criterion asks us to take account of population and electoral trends. What this really says is that we know that population across the town will vary, and we try to anticipate where that change will happen so that the boundaries that are established now will be usable over the next 3 elections. It's a bit of a long shot, but we believe that that is doable, and one of the reasons we offer wards with variations in the population is to anticipate where that might happen. And again, the factor that we use in the calculations, that the town population is forecast to increase to 23,475 by 2026, which was the horizon we were using, an increase of about 6%. We just say quickly in passing, that population calculation, the population distributions, are the kinds of contributions that Watson and Associates normally do and would be part of the basis for this review. Third criterion, means of communication and accessibility. We are, and these terms, by the way, in the bullets are drawn from the guiding criteria from the clerk's report. We are to group existing neighborhoods into wards that reflect current transportation and communication patterns. Where do people move around within the town to get to schools, churches, shopping, recreation, whatever? Those are one of the factors to keep in mind. Geographical and topographical features. We're to use geographical and topographical features to delineate ward boundaries while keeping wards compact and easy to understand. Another way to put that is we're just not going to make up lines and draw them across the map. We're going to use lines, we're going to use features that are already there and try to build wards around recognizable features so that the understanding of where one ward starts and the other one stops is easier to understand than having to pull out a map and figure it out. Fifth criterion, community or diversity of interests. As far as possible, ward boundaries should be drawn around recognized settlement areas, traditional neighborhoods, and community groupings, not through them. So wards are not just numbers. They're not just population figures. They have to be adjusted to fit into the characteristics of your town. Where do people live? Where are the clusters of population in particular that need to be preserved as best we can in the ward system? Let me go back then quickly to this overriding principle. I referred to it as part of a reference related to provincial electoral boundaries. This was a case involving legislation in the province of Saskatchewan, reviewed by the Supreme Court of Canada in 1991, usually referred to as the Carter decision. In that decision, the court argued that voting is about representation. You vote to be represented. You don't just vote once every 4 years and leave it at that. You are voting to establish a representative who will act on your behalf around the council table and in dealings with the community. So extrapolating from the Carter text, each resident will have comparable access to their elected representative, and each ward councillor should speak in governmental deliberations on behalf of the same number of residents. Again, that flexibility I touched on under population is there. We're never going to get down to 5% or 2% or 1%, but we're looking for general balances that allow for people to feel that they can be represented fairly. And in the last point here, it may be necessary to apply some principles less stringently in order to better satisfy what may be viewed as other, if you will, more desirable principles or criteria. In other words, you don't draw a line through a small community just because you need 50 people. You keep that community together, and if the numbers become a little bit stretched, that's all right because you're preserving the community for the sake of representation. Again, background, looking at the factors we worked with, there is a chart in our report based on the work done by Watson that spells out how the particular identifiable population groupings measure against one another, and the overall distribution of population within the town. Similarly, for 2026, with the growth that is there, in some cases it's quite small, in other cases it's fairly large, considering the overall size of the municipality. But it's telling us again, in anticipation of wards that will last for a couple of elections, where are we likely to see the growth, where are we not likely to see growth in any significant fashion. So, the present wards, as I said, match the pre-amalgamation municipalities. 4 wards, 2 of the wards electing 2 members each, 2 of the wards electing 1 member each. This becomes a bit of a challenge if we're trying to figure out what's fair. And this chart, I know, is difficult to read on the screen. It is in the report, and we try to speak to that. One of the things that becomes tricky, of course, is that you can't really measure the 4 wards on the same yardstick, if you will, because some of them are electing 2 and some are electing 1. If you're talking about access, those are very different scenarios. So what we try to do is find a way to help capture whether the wards are within reasonable balance. And we discover that, ironically, the 2 one-member wards, that is 2 and 4, are actually not very similar to one another. One of them is quite high, one of them is quite low. The 2 two-member wards are reasonably balanced. The latter part of the chart on the right side picks up on the point about what if we just leave the 4 wards that are already there and distribute the 5 people among them. In other words, not go through a ward boundary review. We just keep the old wards, and in effect, somebody loses one of the members that they have, because we're not going to pinch it from one of the 1-member wards. It would be one of the 2-member wards. And this is trying to say what would happen if that were the case. And what you see in here, and especially with those red boxes, is that if we simply take one of the 2-member wards and make it a 1-member ward, it becomes grossly inequitable to the residents of that ward, and either way you do it, you end up with an imbalance. And much the same with 2026, that in our view, simply leaving the boundaries the way they are and trying to assign 5 people instead of 6 does not address the population criterion, nor does it address the effective representation criterion. And there is a summary then, again, in the report that takes the 5 criteria, and the 6, including effective representation, and determines whether the ward structure meets the criterion. In our view, there are 2 very significant weaknesses and only some partially successful. So, we then went away, having got that decision in May, 4 wards, 2, 1, 1, no longer workable in our view. Council did not at that time predetermine direction to us. It doesn't say, okay, we're going to have 5 councillors, go design us 5 wards, or go design us 4 wards, or 3, or 2, or whatever. I think that was the right decision, because it's clearly a matter of what's going to work. We can't say in the abstract which of those models is going to work well. We took that direction to elect 5 and worked with that. Now, as well, it's important that we did ask a bit about this in anticipation of that possibility, and there was no clear sense about whether we should have 5 single-member wards or some wards that have more than 1 member. That's a very general perspective. It was not about the specific proposals that were here. But it's a general sense that we were not inclined toward one direction or another. So the new ward boundaries that we were asked to go away and do will be consistent then with these guiding criteria that I've worked through. And back in early July, we presented certain preliminary options that were based on a 4-ward model and a 5-ward model. The four-ward model would see one ward electing 2 councilors and 3 electing 1 each, labeled 4A, B, and C. And a 5-ward model where we created wards each electing 1 councilor, preliminary options 5A, B, and C. We asked for some feedback within the community about these possibilities, asked people to rank them in terms of their preferences, and you can see that there was a certain amount of enthusiasm for 3 of those possibilities and much less for some of the others. Preliminary 4A and B were positively regarded, and 5A as well. The others much less so. In the report, and I won't go through all the details, we applied the same principles in the text and tried to come up with a sense of what the strengths and weaknesses of these various preliminary options were, using a color code. The ones that were clearly yes, the darker green; the ones that were reasonably good, a lighter green; the ones that were yellow were we call it partially. They work in some areas and not in others. And then the red were no. The catch, of course, is that you'll see that the 5-ward options all said no. And there's a very important reason why we ended up with that one. I'm going to come back to that in a sec. But let me just speak to it quickly. One of the things we discovered when we tried to create 5 single-member wards, we immediately run into the problem of the concentration of population in Essex Centre. As we said in the earlier chart, that's about 1/3 of the population of the whole town. That's too big for 1 ward, too small for 2 wards as such, and then compounded by the fact that there are no obvious dividers within the town, or within the urban center rather, and then there are growth issues. This label of no is in a sense technical, because our practice has always been that if a ward in a scenario does not meet the principle at all, we have to call it no. We can't pretend, well, it's close enough. We try to be very rigorous about that. So the category says no, but we suggest that there may be extenuating factors that would allow us to override that. So the goal then is to provide a system of effective representation that seeks relative parity in the population of the wards, with some degree of variation acceptable in the light of the population densities and demographic realities across the town. Back to an earlier principle. In reviewing the feedback we got, in reviewing the analysis that we did, in reviewing the options that we had put together, we determined that, and also to help this decision-making process, we determined that we should come back with 1 4-ward option and 1 5-ward option. And what we could do is, in fact, strengthen the preliminary options by doing a slight reconfiguration of the 4-ward and call it final option 1, and the same thing with the 5 wards and call it 2. So final option 1 is based on some of the features of the 2 of the earlier scenarios, primarily taking the north from one and the south from another, and creating a hybrid, if you will, which, when we do the population calculations, turn out to be quite strong. Again, though, remembering that Ward 1 in this scenario would elect 2 people. It is largely successful on all counts in our view. It uses good boundaries, it keeps communities together, it understands the relationship between the parts of the town that we needed to take into account in our scenario. Option 2 is the 5-ward option. And immediately, as I said a moment ago, we run into the problem. If you're going to take 5 and try and create 5 roughly equal areas, somehow Essex Centre, Urban Centre, needs to be adjusted into 2 different wards. And it turns out that in this scenario, the one we use, the Ward 1 in the immediate area is just about 30 people below the range of variation. So it's pretty darn close given the size of the community, and then that flows into a reasonably good balance across the rest of the town, and it stays within the range in 2026. So we feel that both of these scenarios could be considered successful as a way to deliver representation to the town of Essex. So again, I make the point that we touched on earlier. They're not the same. They have strengths and weaknesses. They have advantages and disadvantages. They have different dynamics around them, which some of you will be familiar with and which we've heard about from the community. The simple way to think about this is for members of council to consider which of these priorities they wish to see in a new system, acknowledging that in all cases our goal is to meet the criteria. We're meeting the criteria in slightly different ways. If the priority of council is to maintain the four-ward system, something that is familiar, and if the priority is to keep all settlement areas, and in particular the Essex Urban Center, in a single ward, then option one is your choice. However, it tends to mean, or not tends to, it does mean that the electors who are in at Ward 1 who get to vote for two members of council, two councilors rather, everyone else would only get one. So there's a bit of an inequity there just because that was the way that would play out. And of course, the Ward 1 councilors would each have many more constituents to serve. They would have roughly twice as many people on the other end of an email or a phone call or whatever than the members of the other wards, or the councilors from the other wards. Conversely, they would have a bigger area to cover. So it's trade-offs, as we said. If the priority, though, is to treat every elector the same, and everyone has one vote for council, then obviously option two would be the preferred direction to go, recognizing that it creates a division within the Essex Urban Center that is slightly uneven. Again, we did not feel that there were other lines that would do a better job. We tried out different scenarios when we did the preliminary options. We felt that the one we came up with was a suitable one to retain. So in our assessment, the final options can each offer effective representation, despite being based on different formats for representation. The 2-1-1-1 versus 5x1. But either choice, and it is council's choice, either choice would be defensible in our view in the event of an appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board. And a bylaw to implement one of these scenarios is open to appeal, but in our view, either one of them could be defensible, given that you've had a thorough discussion, you've had acknowledged principles that have been addressed systematically, and we believe completely in the development of those reviews. We believe that an appeal of a bylaw based on one of these is something that the board would not likely overturn as an alternative. I'm going to stop right there. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Again.
Getting used to this.
Oh, yeah, a lot of work. I just had one question on, what were they? Photos 5 and 6, pages 16 and 17. You had Lakeshore something area
Okay.
in our population.
Residential district, yes. Those would have been terminology that we would get from planning, I think, from the town sources to use to identify those particular areas. Essentially, it's the southern part of the municipality. That's labeled, yeah, there's a label on one of the maps there, thank you. Which map is that?
Which one?
Help, help. Sorry, page?
Figure 7.
Excuse me, Mr. Williams, I was thinking of the municipality of Lake Shore. like
Oh, no,
my
no, no,
opinion.
no, no.
Okay, I got you.
Okay,
It's right on the very bottom there, that
okay,
little
yeah.
teeny
Yeah,
line.
that's terminology that we try to apply.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
we're not merging it with Lake Shore. No, no.
Should be. Now, when the OMB presented this, these are all their rules, right? When you say you don't want to divide a line
No,
to an
no,
area?
no, Mr. Mayor, let me be very clear. These criteria were designed through staff in consultation presumably with others, and the clerk can speak to that. The province provides no direction. The board provides no direction. The board will respond to proposal, or to bylaws in which there are principles that have been used. And these are principles that I think have been derived from cases taken to the board, but there is no definitive list that says you must be A, B, C, and D. We adapt them to Essex and apply them based on case law from the OMB.
Thank you for that. Council, any questions? Mr. Williams? Councilor Snively?
Through your worship, the surveys that were sent back,
Yes?
what's the number as of today? Do you know?
No, I don't. There is a number quoted in the report. There was a closing date for those responses.
Now, the surveys that were sent back, were they sent back, did you keep track of each ward?
I don't have those in front of me. I'm not sure where they came in. I don't know if, could Ms. Brett help me on that? She helped collect those from presidents.
Right.
Okay. Mrs. Brett, thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
through you, Mr. Mayor. We did collect that information, and I believe that the results came through our survey tool. They were collated into a report that I shared with Watson and Associates. And I believe one of the questions was, which ward do you belong to? So that information probably is available. I'm not sure that it has been shared in any reports, but it probably is available. The number of responses was around, I'm not exactly sure, but I believe it was something like 40?
Something like that. Yeah.
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 There
Thank
go.
you.
Okay, Councilor Bondi and then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the consultants. So if anybody's read the Herald paper in the last couple of weeks, they would know that I'm not convinced that anything you've presented is something that is the right fit for our municipality. It's not a slant or a slight against you. It's just listening to the residents in Ward 4 and in Ward 3 saying, what is going on? What are we doing? I have a whole list of concerns, and I was really pushing council to have this special meeting, which we are having next Monday, because I really don't feel a lot of people even know what's going on. Even though we have done multiple media releases, Facebook posts, newspaper advertising, somehow it's acceptable for us to accept mediocre public response. And I just read an article in the Municipal World magazine that said, stop accepting mediocre public response and public feedback. I feel, and I think a lot of people know, that this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue Essex Council will deal with in this term. And even though the boundaries only really fit for the election day, the work that's divvied up in the ward system is going to last. And if you look at the maps, no matter how you slice it, and I don't want to play the north-south card, but I represent the south, no matter how you slice it, the southern half of the municipality loses a rep. And we also are losing a rep in seeing these recommendations while we are already down a rep. So I'm hesitant to do anything right now without having that special meeting, and without, maybe council doesn't have to accept final option 1 or final option 2. There was a resident in Colchester that presented us with a different option. So I want to see if council can have tools available September 11th to have what I call a maps and markers day, to maybe say, okay, does this line make sense here? Maybe we should move it over here. What does that population look like? What does the population, representation by population look like that day? And I would like to, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk, I was hoping I would have one of these, but I got here a little late and they're all scooped up. But really, we need to get more of these out to the public, and we need to get them out to the public like tomorrow morning. So possibly, like we did before in the survey stage, through the libraries. I personally would like 10 copies myself, because I'm going to go show the residents, like, these are the recommendations. So knowing how many people filled out the surveys and from which ward is vital to me. I absolutely need to know that. Knowing if council can provide other lines and see population numbers on September 11th is vital. Getting the word out to our residents that September 11th is a major meeting in Essex. We are talking about big changes in Ward 1. You're either going to vote for 1 rep or 2. That's big. Big changes in Ward 3. You're either going to have 2 reps or 1 rep. Like, that's big. This is big. So I am not happy with mediocre feedback. If it's 300, I might be happy. If it's 40, I might be happy. I'm not so happy the way the timing rolled out, the fact that we're doing public feedback in July. A lot of families are on vacation. I had 2 families message me saying, I couldn't even fill out the survey because the survey had 6 recommendations, and I didn't like any of those 6 recommendations. So I couldn't fill it out. So those are all issues that are coming up. I know I've talked to every council member about this, but I've talked to a couple other council members who have actually some really good out-of-the-box ideas, but council hasn't had that opportunity to talk about those out-of-the-box ideas. So, and now, we have to have this wrapped up in September, I would think. That's another question I have. When is the last date that we have to have this passed to allow for the 90-day appeal period? Because that's putting me in a panic, too. If council realigns the wards September 11th, and we take some of what you've done, but we tweak it and make it our own, how do we get that back to the public? And how do we get the public, support and feedback on that? So I have a lot of red flags. I feel like it's rushed. I know we're not going to get high public feedback no matter what we do, but I am certainly not happy with this mediocre response we've had from the public, because I feel this is one of the biggest issues Essex Council is going to deal with, if not the biggest. So that's my thoughts, and I look forward to having a good working meeting on September 11th and hopefully coming out with a favorable response that works for everybody.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Malash?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Same lines as what Councillor Bondi is speaking to. I think that we didn't have a really good response, but I think we've got a lot of emails coming back from different residents, even though they didn't respond maybe to the survey. I know I've had a lot of emails in regard to this new ward boundaries, but we'll discuss those next week. What I did want to mention to the media and to the audience here this evening is that if you're interested in getting your feedback put out there and you don't have a copy of this ward review, you can go to the town's website, www.essex.ca. It's pretty simple. If you got Wi-Fi at home, you go to the search tab at the top and just put in ward review. Just type in the word ward, and it will come up all the reports on the ward review. You can click on that. You'll see all the information that Dr. Williams has provided us this evening, and it's very interesting. It may take 2 or 3 reads because there's a lot of information there, but it'll give you the gist of what's going on with the ward review. At the same time, when you're on that website, there's a button you can push that says contact councillors. You can send an email to all of us if you don't want to fill out the survey. Just send us all an email. Let us know what your thoughts are. It's just that simple. And even if you don't look at the ward review, if you have concerns about your own ward in particular and you have some ideas, let us know. We'd like to know, are we looking at 4 wards or 5 wards? Perhaps you don't like anything. I know I've had quite a few emails telling me, why are we messing with the boundaries on the wards? Deputy Mayor should be voted at large. You should be adding a person. So there's all different kinds of ideas out there, and we'd love to hear your ideas. www.essex.ca. You can review the ward system, this ward report, and you can also send a letter to all of us councillors quite easily. Just push the contact all councillors button, and you'll be set up to send an email to all of us to let us know your thoughts. Thanks.
Sir? Councillor Bjorkman?
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you very much for coming out and talking to us tonight, going over the numbers and helping us understand where this goes. To Councillor Bondi's issue, it's a problem that we continue to have. Until people are affected personally, until people have something that is important to them in a way that motivates them, we don't get a lot of public input. What's important for us, I think, is that we're talking to our public. We need to be out. We need to be out talking to people. We need to be out going into public places and engaging them. And that's the way we get the most of our information when we're trying to get public input. So I think it's important for us to do that, and it's also important to make sure, as Deputy Mayor just said, that if you do want to get involved with it, it's as easy as going on the web. We need to get that word out to get as much information as we can before next week. And then next week, hopefully, we have a full house, and we can sit down and hammer out our ideas. But again, it's always a struggle to get that turnout. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Williams?
Yes, if I could just comment on a couple of points that have been made already. I'd just like to remind council that in the event that a bylaw of this sort is appealed, the process you followed will be irrelevant. The board will not overturn a bylaw because of the process. You've had a good process. You've given people many, many opportunities to be heard. Whether they speak up or not is not going to tell the board that it's a good plan or not. What will make it a good plan is one that adheres to the criteria that you established. Public response is not one of those criteria. It's important, but it is not the defining factor here. There is a certain amount of, let's call it, a version of NIMBYism in a lot of these cases. People feel that somehow they've been overlooked or somehow penalized by making the change. One of the reasons this report is as long as it is to try to remind people, readers around the table and in the community, that once you change from 6 to 5, a lot of things cannot stay the same. I'll put it that way. Many things can't stay the same, and what we've tried to do is avoid simply saying, let's take the old wards and pinch representation from one of the wards and leave everybody else the same. We made every effort to ensure that that is not what is happening here. It is about primarily a balance of population, and the reality is the bulk of the population is in one corner of your municipality. We can't place them somewhere else. We have to build it around that. So I'd like to encourage council not to see it as somehow a deliberate attempt to underrepresent some part of the town. We've done our best to try to make sure that those principles are adhered to as best we can. And I would also caution getting too far into the weeds by having everybody draw their own map. That's going to be a very long process to try to sort out which of those is going to work or not. That's just a matter of caution. Instead of having a clear choice, I think your choices may become even more muddled. So you better think through how you might want to work with that. If I can, Councillor Bondi asked the question about timing. The reality is that the wards and the council composition in place on December 31st is what will be relevant to the election next October. There is a 45-day appeal period after your bylaw is passed, so you have to work the arithmetic back from there. The board, I suspect, is not going to want to hold a hearing any later than the 20th of December, and probably even earlier than that, because they'll have to write the decision and get it posted. So you can do the arithmetic from there. You really need to make sure that the board has time, if there is an appeal, the board has time to schedule a hearing as early in December as possible. The 45-day appeal period takes you into October. That's really cutting it fine, but if that's what happens, that's what happens. You're better to have a good bylaw and reduce the risk of it being appealed, or if it is appealed, to ensure that it's one that the board will uphold.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Anything further? Okay, I just have a couple comments and then I'll do that. With regards to one of the council members saying we're rushing this, like I've thought about that because I've heard that word many times in these discussions that we've had with Mr. Williams. And the reason we're rushing it, and I will admit we are rushing it, just like he just said, we better have this ready to go soon, very soon. We can't keep prolonging it if you want to have this done for the 2018 election. My thoughts have been, and I haven't shared them with anybody, if we don't have enough time to do it properly, like we're saying, why does it have to be done in 2018? Can't we do it the next election and make sure we do it properly this time around and not, I won't use that word, but mess it up, mess up the process. Those have been my thoughts for the last few weeks, but I don't know. But those are my concerns. But December the 31st, like he said, it has to be done then if we're going to get it done by the 18th. So I think we must rush to make sure that we get it done if it has to be done for this next election. So, Councillor Bondier, we'll read to you. Oh. Thank you very much. And Councillor Bjorkman, and also to discuss this at the 11th. I think that's what was written in the report here. So, and that it be rescheduled to discuss at September 11th. And with that, I'll ask Robert. He has a comment, I think. Oh, did we get a seconder? Councillor Snyder. Okay.
No,
Yes, sir.
I will be available if need be, if there are questions that come up. We'll have to decide whether it's better to be here or try to do it through the phone or something, but in the light of the conversations, we will try to make ourselves available to help members of the community and council work toward a decision.
Yeah, and I just heard from the acting CAO that we will discuss this with council, what they want at that time, one time. Okay? Okay, any questions to that motion? Councillor Vokes.
Just a point of interest, we indicated September 11th. We didn't indicate a time. Or where.
Through your worship, that would be at 4:30 at the Essex Town Hall, 33 Talbot.
Thank you.
4:30.
Thanks.
For that, Councillor Vokes. Anything further to the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much, sir. We will be in touch with you, see you.
Your worship, item 6.3 on the adopted agenda this evening is a presentation and report from the Office of the Integrity Commissioner in regards to recent code of conduct complaints. Mr. Robert Swayze, the Town of Essex Integrity Commissioner, is here this evening to present his report.
Mr. Swayze, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me? Members of council? My report speaks for itself, but I did want to make a few comments, brief comments, to explain some of the conclusions I came to. Firstly, I want to read one section of the code, if I may. This is the code of conduct that is binding on all members of council. Council members will conduct themselves efficiently with decorum and with proper attention to the town's procedural bylaw. They will treat each other and others with respect at all times, which includes not using derogatory language, respecting the rights of other people, treating people with courtesy, and recognizing the different roles others play in local government decision-making. Now, I'm the Integrity Commissioner currently in more than 20 municipalities, and each one of my codes that I enforce contains something similar to that section. I do not enforce it strictly. Any councillor is entitled to his opinion, his or her opinion, Any counselor is entitled to vigorously debate and argue about their own opinion. On the other hand, once council makes a decision and the vote is taken, each counselor must accept it. You can't be denigrating council after the motion has been passed, even no matter how much you disagree. So I have received a complaint from every member of council, well, 5, which is the, except for Councillor Vokes, of course. And that's very serious. It means that he has alienated all of you. There's no one that's sitting on the fence. Everyone wants Councillor Vokes to stop what he's doing. I've interviewed every member of council, and the impression I got is what's he going to do today? Everybody wakes up and says, what's he going to do today? He loses his temper. He storms out of meetings. He uses vulgar language, which all of you confirmed. And this is serious. I'm concerned that the business of council is not being taken care of the way it should be. And it's because of Councillor Vokes. Now, I'll read you my report from last year, just a section of it. I have no doubt that Councillor Vokes is a prime cause, this is a year ago, the prime cause of the disruption of council meetings in the town of Essex and the uncomfortable work environment for staff. I invite any member of council staff or member of the public to file with me a further complaint about Councillor Vokes' actions in the future, and if valid, I will recommend imposing further sanctions against him. Well, that's what's happened. Not only did I receive a complaint, but I received a complaint from everyone. So this is very serious, and I have to do something. The only power I have that can impact Councillor Vokes is to recommend to you that a sanction be imposed, a monetary sanction, and that I'm recommending 2 months of his salary be suspended. Now, this decision is totally up to council. I won't be offended if you say no, but that's what I recommend. This has to stop, and in order for this council to get on with its business. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you very much, sir. Does council have any questions for Mr. Swayze? Okay. No? Okay. Do we have any recommendations with regards to this report? Deputy Mayor Malash?
I'll make a motion that we receive the report and follow through on the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bjorkman. Any discussion to the motion? No? Okay, ready for the question. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? There's none opposed, so unanimous decision. And Mr. Swayze, thank you very much for your report, and hopefully we don't get any more calls to you. Okay, thank you.
Before
Councillor
Mr. Swayze leaves, I got some questions for him.
Okay.
Point of order,
Yes, sir. Your point of order being?
if we're done with this issue, is there more discussion to,
Yeah, I got some
go on with
questions.
this? Or should that have happened before we dealt with the question?
Hang on. Your point of motion, your point of order being that this is done with. If there were any questions, it should have been dealt with earlier. Is that what you're saying?
That's my question.
Okay. So, as the chair, like I am going to agree that you're right. We have dealt with this. I asked if anyone had any questions with regards to this before we had the vote. And once you have the vote, now the subject is finished. So I am going to recognize your point of order and say that this issue is finished, and I will turn the meeting back over to
So,
our
so
our
I got a
clerk, sir.
question. I got a question.
Come-
You ask if anybody has a question.
Okay.
So does council deem me to be nobody?
Councillor Vokes, please. You've
Does
heard my...
council deem me to be nobody?
Councillor Vokes, listen.
No, I
have-
won't. I got
You
a
will
question.
listen, because this is going to be, sir, your first warning, and you know you only get one.
I can't
You
believe
have
you're not
heard
going to let
the
me
chair...
speak to Mr. Swayze.
You have heard the chair speak to the point of order.
But I got questions I got to
Do
ask
not
him.
have the opportunity to do
All I
this.
want to know is, can I appeal it?
This is your warning. You got the warning. One more word,
Well,
and
listen,
sir,
like,
you
what are you
know
going
what
to do? You're
happens.
going to,
Okay,
you're going to fine me?
sir,
Like,
I'm asking you to leave the meeting. You've
I'm
had
not-
your
I'm not
warning.
leaving.
You're going to leave the meeting.
No, I'm not. I
Okay.
just got a simple question.
Listen,
Do-
you don't
do-
listen.
I just got a question.
That's
Sir,
okay.
can I appeal this?
Hey, listen, this meeting, I am adjourning this meeting until this gentleman leaves
Okay,
the hall.
I'll ask Mr.
Okay?
Swayze out in the hallway then.
Ask him in the hall.
Thanks.
This meeting is adjourned until he leaves.
That's what I put up with, people, right there. Thought we were going to get back on track, people.
Absolutely disgraceful. You guys are all disgraceful. Everyone is. That's a setup right there. Disgraceful. What are you talking about? Disgraceful. Folks from there. Disgraceful. How do you guys actually come here and say you're going to do the proper job? You don't even allow someone to speak and defend themselves? Disgraceful. Come on. You gotta be kidding me. Can't defend yourself. Disgusting.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will now declare the meeting back in session, and we will go to our clerk, Robert Auger.
Thank you, Your Worship. 8.1 on the agenda this evening is Corporate Services Report, Finance and Business Services 2017-05, revision to miscellaneous fees and charges. That said report be received, and that Schedule A to Bylaw 1331, being a bylaw to establish a schedule of miscellaneous fees and charges, be revised accordingly.
Moved by Councillor Snively, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Oh, Councillor Bondi, sorry.
Just real quick, I just wanted to thank staff for the timeliness in this report. This issue came up to me through a resident, and staff acted fairly quickly on this, considering it was summer too, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just before you start, Mr. Clerk, Councillor Oakes, I removed you from the meeting, but you have an opportunity to stay. If you apologize to everyone that's left in the room, then council would have a vote as to whether they would allow you to stay or not. So if you're prepared to give an apology, sir? No? I take that as a no, I'm sorry. So we will continue. Mr. Clerk.
8.2 on the agenda is Building Report 2017-07, that said report providing council with a summary of building activity in the town for the month ending July 31st be received.
Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Deputy Mayor Melange. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.3, Planning Report 2017-34, re 2018 Countywide Active Transportation System, or CWATS, project at County Road 50, Colchester South, that said report be received, and that council support an application to be made to the county for CWATS 2018 partnership funding for the continuation of the 1.5 meter wide paved shoulders along County Road 50 from Ravine Cottages to the entrance at Oxley Beach at a cost to the town of $270,000. Which represents 60% of the total estimated cost of $450,000.
Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Bondi. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Melange.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Watson. So the contingencies portion is where I'm concerned. 2,270 plus contingencies. What contingencies, and approximately how much do you think that contingency would be?
Mr. Watson, our policy planner, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, these numbers are based on estimates on preliminary field surveys and of the road itself. And we need to get final figures from the county, because it's the county who will actually be undertaking the construction of the road. And so at this point, we don't have exact numbers. We base these numbers on the price paid this year and allowing about 5%. For those kinds of, for those differences.
Continue, sir.
Follow up? So with that in mind then, that's what I wanted to hear was a percentage. Can we change that contingency to 5%? And then if it's more than that, then it comes back to council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's reasonable.
That's okay with the...
Okay. We can put that in. Sure. To the mover and seconder, sure. Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Bondi and then Councillor Snively.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To our policy planner, Jeff Watson, perhaps briefly we can explain, I think we went west and then we went east and then maybe we went west and now we're going east, 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 east. I think that, I think, I've had questions about why aren't we going west? And I think we should get the message out there that the west is trickier, and it's easier when it comes from your mouth because you've studied this than it is from mine. But I think we're going east a couple times in a row. So to explain to the residents out there why we're not going west, I think will be beneficial.
Yes, sir, Mr. Watson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bondi is correct. It's very difficult to go west now from where we are right now, because we're running into issues with the very shallow boulevards with ditches and swales and things that aren't as common when you go east toward Kingsville. The idea is really to complete the eastbound connection, because Kingsville is coming our way. And so the idea will be to finish off the eastward projection and then continue west to finish off Colchester. And if Amherstburg also shows a similar interest that Kingsville shows, then the big push would be westward once Amherstburg is also pushing in our direction.
Thank you. Councillor Snively.
Just a quick question to administration. Any kind of funding coming down the channel for this kind of project? I know in the past there was. Is there anything in the near future? Or? Because CWATS was a big thing with the government, senior government, and if anybody can answer that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Chris has applied for funding under the commuter program that the Ontario government is offering for next year and maybe for 5 years beyond, and that's under the Climate Change Action Plan. So it's one of the provincial incentives to basically get people on basically commuting on bicycles as opposed to using other forms of transportation. We've never applied in the past because it's a brand new program, so we don't know what the success will be. But Chris is applying for that for the balance of the eastward projection of the trail along County Road 50.
So, through your further that, so we don't know the time limit when we would hear anything back from senior government on this type of project.
It's scheduled for 2018. So
sometime
so
in
the application will be going in shortly, and then we'll be finding out later this year for 2018 construction phases.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.4, Your Worship, is Planning Report 2017-35, read 2018 CWATS funding. That said report be received, that council support an application to be made to the county for CWATS funding for $9,500 as a 50% share of the cost of placing 9 benches and 2 route map signs on CWAT trails in Essex Center and Harrell. And further, an application be made to the county for CWATS funding for $575, which represents a 50% share of the cost of holding 2 bike rodeos at 2 events in the town in 2018.
Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Snively. Any questions? All in favor of that motion? Motion carries.
8.5 is Chief Administrative Officer verbal report in reference to an update on the recent meeting with the ministers at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference.
Our acting CEO, Mrs. Hunter.
Through you, Your Worship, I just wanted to update council about the meetings that we had with ministers at the AMO conference. There was basically 4 ministers that we met with. The first was the Ministry of the Internal Attorney General's Office, and the issue that we were talking to them about was the length of time that it's taking to obtain orders that approve our set fine schedules, which is currently averaging 7 to 10 weeks. The minister seemed very interested in this matter, and his assistants took several notes on the issue, and they indicated that they'll look into this process with their staff and follow up on any outstanding set fine schedules. His only concern was when it gets to the judge level, that's really out of his control, but he would do as much as he could from his end. Currently, we have 2 set fine schedules that are outstanding, our animal control bylaw and our sign bylaw. The next meeting that we had was with the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. There was 2 issues that were presented to this minister. The first was the cost of the cost involved with the enhancement for a dedicated contract sergeant for the OPP. Basically, that is an additional cost to the town of $185,000. Minister Lalonde's response was basically, through her and her staff, that this sergeant's position is really in addition to what is required to meet police adequacy and effectiveness standards, and therefore that is why it's considered an enhancement. The second issue that we discussed was amendments to the SPCA Act with respect to tethering and defining mental distress and preventative care for animals while they're being sheltered. The minister did respond that they are doing some work in the animal control area. Currently, they have had some consultation period related to exotic animals, but she did not see anything else coming forward for the immediate future. We also had a meeting with the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport looking for funding for our recreational lands. Minister McMahon suggested that we consider phasing in this project and maybe put in an application to the Trillium Foundation for some funding. The next uptake is in October, and there is up to $500,000 available. She also mentioned applying through Tracy Ramsey's office for a grant for cultural spaces through Heritage Canada. So those are two that I will follow up with the Director of Community Services. And the last one was the Ministry of Education regarding the purchase of Hera High School. And essentially that was, it was recommended that we consider going through with an application for the Community Hub program that will allow us 18 months to do a business plan for Community Hub. I will be bringing back a report to Council at the September 18th meeting on the whole subject of the Hera High School. So it's just an update for Council.
Thank you very much for that, Donna. Move to receive the report. Councillor Bondi, Councillor Bjorkman. Questions? Good job. All in favor? Motion carries.
Your Worship, any updates from County Council this evening?
Mayor Malash? No, we got a meeting tomorrow night, so possibly our next meeting. Thank you.
11.2.1 is correspondence to be considered for receipt or receipt in support. That a copy of the correspondence sent to Rick Nichols, MPP, from Chatham, Kent, Essex, advising that the town of Tecumseh supports Bill 94, an act to amend the Highway Traffic Act with respect to evidence obtained from school bus camera systems, and which requested that the province be encouraged to mandate school bus cameras on all school buses be received and supported, and if so supported, that the appropriate letter be sent from the town of Essex.
Okay. Just to receive, Councillor Bjorkman. Seconder. Deputy Mayor Malash. So that's to receive only. Okay. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Motion carries.
11.2.2 is correspondence from Elizabeth Engert with respect to an offer to sit on the Essex BIA Board of Management. That said correspondence be received and that Ms. Engert be appointed to the Essex BIA with Schedule A to the Bylaw 1376 to be amended accordingly.
Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
.2.4 is correspondence from Councillor Bjorkman in respect to an offer to sit on the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Committee in the vacant councillor seat. For said correspondence for receipt, and that Councillor Bjorkman be appointed to the ACT Committee, and that Schedule A to the bylaw be updated accordingly.
Surely someone's going to move this. Councillor Snively. Supported by Councillor Bondi. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you very much, sir.
Item 12 on the agenda is committee meeting minutes. That the committee meeting minutes listed in this agenda item 12, together with any recommendations to council noted therein, be received and adopted as circulated.
Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Under agenda item 15, notices of motion, notice of motion 15.1.1 was withdrawn at the request of Councillor Vokes, and that was with respect to moving the caboose from the train station to Main Street. That was withdrawn at Councillor Vokes' request this evening. The second notice of motion, 15.1.2, which had been postponed to this evening, back from the August 21st meeting due to Councillor Vokes' absent, is before us this evening. At the last meeting, Council moved with a motion to postpone this to the next subsequent council meeting.
And we want to do the same again. Deputy Mayor Malash moves, supported by Councillor Snively. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Agenda item 16, reports from council members.
Okay, I think it's Larry Snively's, Councillor Snively's chance first.
No reports, but don't forget the fish fry every Friday at the Legion and Harrow.
Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the Harrow Research Station is having an open house on September 16th. I don't quite know the hours. I was trying to Google it right now, but couldn't find it fast enough. So if you're interested in coming out. I also have a request. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I kind of feel it'd be helpful. Doug Sweet has been working on a file, and I was wondering if he could update council and the community on the Lionel Saunders file. Please, Doug, if we could, Mr. Mayor, through you, if we can.
You able to do that, Mr. Sweet?
For Councillor Bondi, I can. Through your worship, just council gave direction a while ago regarding gateway signage for Mr. Sanders. We've had a few mock-ups and will be forwarded to an artist, and those should be going up probably in a couple months. And they'll be recognized as a triathlete, but also as world record at that time.
Thanks. Hey, I'm going to pass this over to Deputy Mayor Malash. Seems how I've been on vacation the last couple of weeks. I know nothing about the Harrow Fair. I know he's going to say something about that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, I will say something about the Harrow Fair. Great attendance again this year. They had great weather for it. I know that I was at the pie auction on Thursday evening. They raised a little over $13,000 to give to the John McGivney Center through the pie auction, which is fantastic. All the John McGivney administration were there to, and a lot of the parents who have children that are attending that school were there. Great entertainment. Harrow Home Hardware was the purchaser of the most expensive pie, which was $3,000 just for the top pie at the fair. So that's something of significance as well. Opening ceremonies went well, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for asking me to step in your place to do that. I brought greetings on behalf of the town as well as the mayor and all of us councilors and administration. Next, I wanted to talk about an event coming up at Coan Park. They have a year-end ball tournament every year, but it also invites the rest of the community to come out to the steak dinner. I'll be selling tickets next council meeting. They're $20 per person if you can come out. There's also a dedication that's going to be happening. One of our ball diamonds is going to be named after a long-standing Essex resident. His name is John Alexander. He's been very involved with minor ball, starting up in the very beginning with McGregor Minor Ball, and both kids, adults, in between, travel, he's done it all, been there and really super involved, and involved in the actual first board of directors for the Coan Park way back in the day when it was Colchester North, and just a vacant piece of land with no ball diamonds. So he's been there forever and an important and integral part of the development of that park. More so retired these days, but we're going to dedicate and name one of the diamonds in the ballpark to his memory of helping out in the park. So again, that's Saturday, September the 30th, if anybody's interested in coming out. And that's about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sir, Councillor Bjorkman. Okay, I got a couple things to mention. I know first, I think of the day I was going away on vacation, I got a email from one of the coaches for our junior hardball team in town. AA champions, their OBA. It happened, a week or week and a half before the OBAs start Labor Day weekend. So congratulations to that team. Jim Nevin and the young guy from Lucier Estates helps coach, I couldn't remember his name. But anyways, we also had a Bantam major team win the championship over the Labor Day weekend. We had another team, which I have a great-grandson that plays for. They got beat in the finals. They beat this team by 1 run, and then they lost 2 games in the finals badly to the team that ended up beating. But we had 2 teams end up in second place, over the Labor Day weekend. So we had 2 winners and 2 seconds in our minor ball team. So congratulations to all you little guys. And that's it for me.
Item 17, any announcements this evening?
Anyone, first up? No. I was going to mention something about Lori Brett, but that's in a bylaw back here. So it's coming up very shortly, so sit tight, young lady. I would just like to, I know everyone here knows what happened tonight firsthand, but to anyone that's at home wondering what the heck happened, on behalf of all of us here, I apologize for what happened. So hopefully it doesn't happen again. Thanks.
Item 18, 18.1, bylaws that require a third and final reading. 1624, being a bylaw to provide for the Malden Road drain and extension bridge for Richard and Kimberly Myers.
Moved by Councillor Snively, supported by Councillor Bondi. Questions? All in favor? That passes.
Bylaw 1635 for third reading this evening to confirm the proceedings from the from the August 21st regular council meeting.
Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Bondi. Any questions? All in favor? Carries.
Bylaws for first, second, third, and final reading this evening. 1636, being a bylaw to discharge bylaw 792, registered pursuant to an indenture between the Corporation of the Town of Essex and the Harrell Health Center with respect to financing of the Harrell Family Health Center.
Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Questions? All in favor? Carries.
And your worship, before council considers this upcoming bylaw, bylaw 1639, it gives me a great amount of pleasure to announce that Lori Brett has accepted the position of Deputy Clerk, Legislative Services. As I'm sure council and administration and a lot of people in the community are already aware, she has served for the town for the last 5 years, served exceptionally well in the position of Manager of Communications. She brings to us and continues to bring to us a wide range of experience in law, research, records management, and of course, communications. And so there's no doubt in my mind she's well positioned to help. She's well positioned to take on the challenges in the clerk's department and to help move the department forward. So I'd just like to welcome her this evening.
Congratulations, young lady. Your dad would have been proud of you.
And your worship, with that being said, we have bylaw 1639 to appoint a deputy clerk, Legislative Services for the town of Essex.
Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Snively. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
And we have bylaw 1638 for first and second reading this evening, and this is the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this September 5th, 2017 regular council meeting.
By Councillor Bondi, supported by Deputy Mayor Meloche. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Motion to return will be well received, and have a great evening, everyone. Night.